It's 30th of October 2024, late spring, early summer. Brilliant day. It's about 24 degrees, a little breezy, and the gardens, which is one of the jewels in the crown of Ballarat. Were established in the 1850s, and Ballarat's lucky because the city forefathers had some great foresight in planning, and that combined with the finance that the gold and mining revenue brought. Just let some people passing by. Means that there was great planning, and the heritage and history and architecture of Ballarat. It's just a very grand city, and we're very lucky. We're in the Botanical Gardens, which began in the 1850s. And the city forefathers decided, you know, what do we need? We need a cathedral, and we need some churches, and we need a town hall, all of which are very grand and stately, and we need a botanical gardens. And they chose this spot right beside Lake Wendouree, which is through there. You can sort of see through there, through the trees. And one of the things that the Ballarat Botanical Gardens is famous for is the Prime Minister's Avenue. And in 1939, it was begun by Richard Crouch, who was a federal politician. He was a soldier, he was a patron of the arts, he was what they call a protectionist and a liberal. And then later in his career, he ended up being involved in the Australian Labour movement, and he put up a bequest of £1,000, and the first 14 busts of all the Prime Ministers were commissioned and unveiled in 1940. And of course, the first one we have, as every good Australian history buff or schoolboy will know, is Edwin Barton, first Australian Prime Minister, 1901 to 1903. I'm not going to go through every single one, but there are some of note whose names you may recognise, and some perhaps less so. And across here, possibly motivating Richard Crouch, was the fact that Alfred Deakin, who was the member for Ballarat and Prime Minister on 3 separate occasions, he gave his name to a university, Deakin University, and the avenue runs all the way down here. It's also notable that in the 2000s, when we had a fairly quick turnover of Prime Ministers, there was some politics went on, and several Prime Ministers were toppled within their own party, and the upshot of that was we ended up having a whole series of Prime Ministers in quick succession, and the trust fund that was provided by Colonel Crouch ran out of money. And for a while there was a question there as to what will we do when we can't afford to commission these busts like every year or two, because the quick changeover of Prime Ministers. After discussion, the City of Ballarat stepped in, and they have been paying for the commissions. At the moment, the only 2 Prime Ministers who don't have a bust here are the previous one, Scott Morrison, and the current one, Anthony Albanese. Obviously they will probably wait until they are no longer in office so they can put an end date on the plinth, but so we have Alfred Deakin. We're just going to go for a bit of a walk. George Reed, John Watson, Andrew Fisher, Joseph Cook, Stanley Melbourne Bruce, James Scullen, also a local boy born at Trawalla, and Joseph Lyons, 32 to 39. So they would have been the original commissions, and the commissions continued. One of many of the original statues provided or bequested by Thomas Stoddart. They are classical marble statues scattered throughout the gardens. Brilliant flower beds. I believe those are stocks. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. So probably one of the most well-known Australian Prime Ministers, Robert Menzies. John Curtin, 1941 to 46, also has a university named after him. Francis Ford. Magnificent vintage oak trees. Harold Holt. Some of you may be aware that Harold Holt achieved notoriety for his demise. He went swimming off the beach at Portsea, south of Melbourne, and was never seen again. There are various theories as to what happened to him. Some people suggest he probably drowned because the beach was quite notorious. Some people still suggest that he was picked up by a Russian submarine. Harold Holt achieves notoriety because whilst other prime ministers had universities and institutions named after him, Harold Holt had a swimming pool named after him, which is classic Australian humour, that the poor fellow drowned, so what do? We name a swimming pool after him. Ben Chifley, John Gorton, John McEwen, Billy McMahon, another very famous Prime Minister, personally I think iconic, Gough Whitlam, who story there was, in a constitutional crisis, was sacked by the then Governor General, Sir John Kerr. Huge incident in Australian politics. And he was succeeded, they went to a general election, and he was succeeded by Malcolm Fraser. Bob Hawke, Paul Keating. Mr. Keating is still with us. And all the Prime Ministers from this point on are still living. John Winston Howard. Kevin Rudd. So he had 2 tilts at the Prime Ministership, and then in 2013 Julia Gillard, another Thomas Stoddard statue, autumn. Tony Abbott, can't see him in the shade. Malcolm Turnbull. Scott Morrison deposed Malcolm Turnbull, took the Prime Ministership, then we went to an election and Anthony Albanese, our current Prime Minister, took the Prime Ministership. Some magnificent original vintage trees. We had a very bad windstorm come through about 18 months ago, and it took out literally dozens and dozens of the original trees. These are giant sequoias, certainly living up to their name. Natives of North America, but they obviously seem to be liking the climate. Have a magnificent chestnut tree there in full flower. One of my personal favourites. So we'll end the wander. The main purpose of this was to show you the Prime Minister's Avenue, but also the gardens are looking absolutely terrific. If you do come to Ballarat, you're really missing out if you don't come for a bit of a wander. There's some great acanthus plants here. A lot of people don't like them because they can be invasive, but they've yet to sort of flower, but they're obviously really, really healthy. And we've got some replacement sequoias here, who are obviously doing really well. I'm going to be in place for the next century or so. Okay, I'll end this here. All the best.